Hello, everyone. Welcome back for part three. For this part, we're going to talk about law and legislation in regards to busking and street performance as it pertains really just directly to New York City. PBS has put out a very cool mini documentary on busking in New York City, and we're going to watch a majority of it, or at least a good chunk of it, for our third part and talk about some of these ideas that are covered. So let's go ahead and go over to the video. 1 second.
Is D, and I'm here with a song for you.
Street performance, often called busking, goes back to ancient times. As author Patricia J. Campbell puts it, there have been street performers at least as long as there have been streets.
Ooh, I said all the wrong things.
This is a Flushing Main Street.
Oh, I stood my ground.
Just day to day, going through, being on the train, walking through the city, my wish is always to be anonymous, but this is sort of the opposite of that. You're putting yourself out there, and I think it's really brave.
You were ignoring all the signs. You took my hand and you set me down.
There's a little bit of tension in the train that's also good for performing, but it's like a different feeling.
Like the reason I think I'm able to do this is because I come in, I bring a sincere energy.
No, on my own.
And how long have you been doing this?
Done this actually as basically my day job for like the last 5 years. I make better money doing this than I certainly did waiting tables, and definitely than I did doing a lot of other jobs that I only did for no reason other than money. So I mean, hell, I was doing this for free anyway.
I moved to New York City to pursue my dream of music, but I was nannying part-time. I love kids, and I was like, this is a good part-time job that'll allow me to still like go to open mics and like do music. And I would see people busking, and I always just thought it was like so courageous. And I'd see like amazing buskers where I was just like, wow, like they're so talented and they were so like carefree. And I was just like, I wish I had those guts.
YOLO is what I believe and fight it up.
Finally, I was like, let me try it, worked up the nerve, and I did it, and I was making more than I was nannying, so since then I started busking.
As we light it up.
Here in New York City, there's a complicated legal history with busking. And over the last century, the city has gone back and forth on whether or not it's allowed or banned. During the Great Depression, busking became a popular way to make money. That is until Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia outlawed it in 1936, calling the street performers beggars. The ban continued all the way to 1970 when poet Allen Ginsberg challenged the ban as unconstitutional and won. Busking is protected as a form of free speech in the US, meaning it can't be prohibited in areas where other forms of free speech are not prohibited. But even though busking is now legal in the subways, that hasn't stopped the police from arresting buskers.
Cops are so annoying. Even I have to permit. They come up to me sometimes. They just like it's too loud or they're just annoying.
It was really a struggle. If you weren't a sponsored musician, if you weren't a Music Under New York musician, you go through that process, then yeah, it was tough.
I'm trying so hard. I'm trying so hard.
In 1985, the MTA created a program called Music Under New York that gives artists a special permit to perform in the subways. For some, this permit is great because it allows you to get priority at popular locations and protection from law enforcement.
Can you tell us a little bit about Muni?
Yes, so Music Under New York is a program that was created for people like myself and other talented performers throughout the city to be able to legally perform in the subway and not, get in trouble with the police. And so there are regulations like, spaces and places you can do it and things like that. The audition takes once a year they auditioned maybe 300 people this year, and out of 300, they chose me as one of the 30 people for this to get into the program.
Admittance into the program is through one audition held every year. And from the over 300 musical acts that applied in 2018, only 28 were admitted. This has led many musicians to criticize the MTA for virtually controlling who can and who can't perform in the subway systems.
Let's pause and talk about that real quick. Isn't that interesting that there is an audition process to allow you to the ability to have a permit and then escape police harassment. So that banner, much like a taxi medallion, has a major cash value to musicians, and it's incredibly competitive. That also begs the question of what kinds of music are represented and what people and what amount of diversity is also covered within who is presenting music. It should also feel like a move of elitism. The idea that there is some sort of quality control and perhaps a preference for musical genres that have a correlated academic study. So, I think further investigation is needed on, taking a survey of who is on the committee, how they are representing New York as a whole, and whether that is a accurate snapshot of the musical community too. So just some things to think about, especially in regards to New York specifically. So let's go back to the video.
Muni is maybe necessary in some ways, I suppose, if you really want to not break the law, technically playing with the amplification. I kind of enjoy breaking the law in small ways if I can. Maybe you can cut that out.
No, I think that's awesome.
It starts with today, no more holding me. I'm living my life, no one chains holding me. It starts with today, no more holding me.
The good news is that in recent years, the police have begun to loosen up on arresting buskers. This has hopefully created a more fair space where both Muni artists and independent artists can share their talents with the public.
I've been a liar, I've been a thief, I've done stuff you wouldn't believe.
Any noticeable differences between when you first started performing on the streets versus now?
Yes, absolutely. We've had mayoral changes, so ever since that leadership changed, I've noticed the law enforcement really loosen up on busting buskers' chops, so to speak.
What motivates you to come out here even on cold days like this?
It's soul food for me. It's necessary for my health and well-being. Yeah.
We all grow up.
I like the comparison of busking to soul food because it's the passion for music that keeps these artists coming back to perform. Busking isn't easy, and even though there are many rewards, there are just as many challenges.
What are some challenging things about busking?
Every now and then I get kind of a Grinch-like person.
How do you deal with that?
I don't.
You don't.
I just
I like that.
People don't seem to care anymore. Everybody has headphones on, or they're looking at their iPhone.
You know, you're just talking at walls. And a lot of people do talk at walls in this city. A lot of people totally talk at walls. A lot of people are walls to be talked at.
The most challenging thing about busking is getting things here. Like, lugging my stuff. Yeah, lugging my stuff.
Sound, no electricity.
Playing with gloves on, underneath a grate, you know, and the cold air is just like blasting down on you, getting those sympathy tips.
At one point I was singing and people were gathering and, you know, applauding me and really getting into it and singing along and putting money in my little basket. And this one person was like, "Why are you singing? Why do you have it, blah, 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 you know, you sound terrible, blah, blah." And I was like, okay, I didn't really react, but she kept going, and the more she kept saying crazy stuff, the more people would just put money in my basket. So I was hoping she would keep going.
One of the other challenges, and I cover this in my lecture notes as well, is the idea, of course, if you don't have a pitch man or you don't have a hat man or a bottler, you're usually putting something out to receive gratitudes. Sometimes theft of equipment is, you know, ongoing for buskers. They're performing. They have some things on them. Oftentimes they are not as mobile. If people will steal things from them. But what happens more often is a really despicable practice called dipping. And that's the illusion that you're giving money, but you're actually taking money from the case or the jar or whatever it might be, and you're concealing it with a sleight of hand movement. And you know, this is obviously that's the risk behind doing a solo act or not having someone be responsible for the intake of gratitudes alone. We're going to watch a little bit more of this and then close out our third section. Let me pull up our video again.
I also think that busking provides a unique space to experiment. What I mean by that is when you perform at a concert, the audience is there to see you and most likely came to hear music. However, when you're busking, you're performing for people in their space and they can choose to ignore you or stop and listen.
You are imposing on people by being it's a public space. And I mean, you fart on the train, you're imposing on people, you know. Sorry, I farted on your world. But, you know, it's my idea of a nice smell. You know.
Wait, what? Okay. Do you feel like it's easier to connect with people while you're busking versus performing on a different stage or a different venue?
I think because the subway allows you to interact with anyone and everyone can listen, it gives you a wider platform to engage with a wider audience as opposed to someone that can afford to pay or who's able to pay to go to a show or whatever it is, you know. I started busking because I've known since I was little that I wanted to be a singer, but as I got older and I was auditioning and performing more, I was suffering from really bad performance anxiety. So much so that it actually was getting in my way and I was losing like the joy that I had found in singing. So that's when I decided to do something bold and like kind of like push my comfort zone as best as I could, and the thing I thought of was singing in the subway.
I deal with a lot of stage fright.
Yeah.
And I have all my life.
Yeah.
But anytime I remember that it's about something that's not within, but
Right.
outside with the audience,
Right.
and it usually gets better.
So one thing that I want to draw attention to before we close out this section is the idea of also police involvement. While there is a much more relaxed attitude towards buskers at this current juncture, the idea of police interaction with buskers and street artists and performance artists, they really interact with those artists because they are, you know, in one way or another disturbing a public space. And part of the reason why we see circle circle settings, in addition to walkthroughs and not so much streetlight performers, is because certainly at traffic intersections where there's already a police force sometimes helping navigate the flow of traffic, really that's an unwanted space. And if any, for those performances, and for anyone who has had the great displeasure of perhaps driving in New York City, you would probably agree that it's not a place for a juggler on the West End Highway, for example, while waiting for a light. New York is full of really amazing buskers, street performers. We're going to conclude our fourth section talking about a pianist who brings his instrument to Washington Square Park and why he does it. Each of these buskers has a different story that brings them to a more public performance space. And I think a number of them are worth listening to. So I will see you back for our fourth and final selection shortly.